In today's episode of the SYNTHO podcast, I am joined by Niko Maxen. We chat all about the eventful 18 months he's had, where he was actually diagnosed with kidney disease, but then he went on to run a triathlon, which is absolutely incredible. And yeah, all about his music, life in Australia, and loads more. It was a really, really good chat. It went to places which I didn't expect in terms of things about life and having different streams of income and things like that. And yeah, it was really, really nice to chat to him. And we've never really had a chat properly, apart from on Facebook and stuff. So yeah, the internet is a wonderful place and there are some wonderful people out there. And before we get stuck into it, I'll just remind you that this podcast is sponsored by myself, the SYNTHO Electronic Music Hub, helping producers take their music to the next level. So if you're a music producer and you are stuck and can't seem to get any better and you keep making the same mistakes, well, I am here. And you'll be able to find the link attached to this video where you can sign up now. You can even do a 7-day trial for £10. So yeah, what is there to not like about that? So yeah, let's go with this episode of the SYNTHO podcast. Welcome to the podcast, mate. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thanks. Very good.
Thanks for making the time, because I can imagine with a baby, it is not the easiest.
Yeah. Yeah, like gone are the days where I could like burn an hour doing this or burn an hour doing that, or get to have your dinner and then relax. It's like the afternoon is when things start to get a bit hectic in this house. 5 o'clock onwards, it all gets a bit crazy.
But all is good.
Yeah, fantastic, mate.
Sick, man. So let's do a little introduction of yourself. As many may know you as Niko Maxen, the DJ. But you're actually residing in Australia now.
That's true, yeah.
And you've been doing the music game a long time, right?
Yeah, fairly lengthy stint, but probably more. Only really started to gather traction and success in the last 5 years. Dare I admit, I've been making music for probably the best part of 15 years now. And the start of that was pretty tragic, I must admit. I was making like some hip hop and just all sorts. And like, yeah, I mean, I dread to think what any of that music sounded like back then. But yeah, more recently, I've managed to sort of hone my craft a little bit. And yeah, living in Australia now. We moved here 3 years ago, which was, I guess, as a result of we came here on holiday and absolutely fell in love with the place. And we'd always thought that we'd want to sort of move abroad and find somewhere else to live and raise a family and stuff. And we were very fortunate that Australia was the place that we were able to make that happen. So been here 3 years. And yeah, it's been fantastic.
But you're actually from Leeds, or were you just living in Leeds before you went to Australia?
Yeah, from Leeds, yeah. Born and raised in Leeds. Lived in Harrogate for a fair few years. And yeah, Leeds last few years. So yeah, big shift from Leeds, freezing cold winter weather to hot Australian weather, but definitely no looking back.
Polar opposites. Yeah, I've been really thinking about recently. It's been dead nice weather in England the last 2 weeks. Like every day, such nice sunshine all day, and then now it's raining. I'm like, fuck, I can't do this. And I think the only place I could see myself is Australia, but the main drawback, I think, is it's just how far it is for gigs. And I think, did you notice that since you moved out there, it's made it, well, virtually impossible, I guess. Well, I guess with the timing of COVID and stuff.
I mean, it has been impossible given the COVID situation. It's funny because I still get like gig requests and people don't understand what's going on in terms of like Australia. And, they have a very strict border here. And pretty much since the start of COVID, there was no one was allowed in or out really. And if you did come in, you had to quarantine in a hotel for 14 days under strict supervision of, the army at one point. So yeah, there's no coming in and out. So gigs were a complete no-no, but I'm still getting like requests. Hey bro, come to South America. I'm like, that's not going to happen. But yeah, moving here, before the COVID situation, that was always something that was on my mind. It's going to be difficult to get out of here for gigs. Even if you put aside the fact that it adds a lot of cost to the promoter, just from a time perspective, like you're looking at like 24 hours to get to somewhere like Europe, and then 24 hours back, and on top of that, you're going to stay for a little while, and there's pretty bad jet lag and stuff. So it was pretty impractical. But there's a good scene here. In fact, there's a fantastic scene here. And there's a couple of very high profile gigs, and I was happy with that, like playing once or twice every couple of months, and playing, but selecting, big, good gigs to play. That was fine for me. It allowed me the freedom to concentrate more on productions than gigs and stuff. So yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword, I suppose.
Yeah, that's the exact expression I was thinking. But yeah, the way of life looks like the dream way of life.
Yeah, I mean, it is a better way of life. I live in Melbourne, which I guess what people think when you anywhere in Australia is just hot 24/7, but that's not the case. It's actually pretty cold here in winter. I say that now with my like Melbourne sort of acclimatization. It's by no means cold compared to
Leeds.
But I have to wear a hoodie every now and again. So
the struggles. So what I think we should talk about the music first. There's a lot to talk about. I went through your Instagram before, and it was like there was so much I kind of trying to condense, and I thought it's better you to tell the story. But I think we should touch first on music, because that's probably how most people know you. Just the early influences, things like that, and a bit of background on. I think it's always interesting to know how people actually discovered this weird niche genre that we're into, and then we can maybe move on to the more live stuff, which is really interesting. And
yeah, sure. So I guess music for me is like a childhood thing. We had when I was growing up, my mum was really into music, and she had this very old-fashioned like record player. It was like a piece of furniture, like a wooden sort of side table type thing. Inside it had a record player. What I can only describe as like a small mixing console. It even had like a little EQ thing, and I guess it was like to control the volume for the amp and stuff and whatever. And a little section where you would keep your records. And I remember when I was younger, she always used to let me choose what music we'd put on, and she'd always put music on when she was like cleaning around the house and stuff. So I kind of was around music a lot, and records, and actually I inherited all those records when my mum died, and still here in my record collection, all sorts of weird stuff. But so music was like something that I was kind of grew up with, but never really like learned an instrument or anything like that when I was younger. Just a pure interest really. And then I'd say when computers and stuff started to become a bit more popular, so probably, God, I don't even know what year this was, but I remember getting my first ever laptop, and I remember a guy I used to work for a nightclub I was helping promote, and it was like an R&B night and hip hop night, and the guy that I was working for, his mate was making music on FL Studio, and I was like, oh, I've got a laptop, like I'm gonna give that a shot. And I remember, that that hallelujah moment when you first make like a little drum loop, and I was like, oh my God, this is it. And so I just pissed about with that stuff for years, and I was actually really into hip hop music. So I was kind of sampling records, a lot of the records I'd actually picked up off my mum, and just putting little drum beats over the top of it and stuff. Pretty basic stuff, but that took me through to like my 20s, I suppose, early 20s, and then really got introduced to house music when I went to Ibiza for a holiday, and I was just like blown away. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. I mean, probably something to do with the fact that every person that ever goes there first time is like falls in love with the place, and
yeah,
music like that for the first time, they're just like blown away. So then when I came back, I was like, right, I'm going to start trying to do a bit of this kind of stuff, and just evolved really. It was again pretty dismal, but I guess my entry point was like kind of funky house, a little bit of like electro kind of house. And I don't know whether it's just my nature or what, but I just always wanted to find and listened to music that just took things a little bit further, had a bit more intricacy, a little bit more detail, and that just led me just down this like weird rabbit hole to like wanting more and more unheard of stuff, more intricate music, kind of doing away with all the big fancy frills and actually drilling into like the core of it, which is like the drums, the grooves, the intricate percussion bits and stuff. And that's probably still where I reside today in terms of my style of music. Nothing too dramatic in terms of like instrumentation and melodies and stuff. I tend to focus a lot on grooves, textures around those grooves, and percussion and that kind of stuff. So that's just kind of where my interest lies, is in that sort of in the heart of the belly of the beast of just grooves and drums and percussions, really.
Yeah, I always say a similar thing in terms of it was the curiosity that brought me deeper into just finding more music. I was just generally curious at a young age, like, wonder what else I can find. It was like UK garage, then I found more stuff, and then drum and bass, then dubstep, and then eventually I stumbled on house music. I was like, fuck, how did I not even find this years ago? Like, I didn't even know this massive underworld existed. But if I'm completely honest, it seems like every year another underworld of music gets discovered. It's just like an endless pit of stuff.
Yeah, and I think like I've never really been one for genres and stuff, but things are just sort of like, it's like one big melting pot now. And you hear things and you're like, right, I cannot categorize that, but I know I like it. But yeah, that curiosity. It's either within you or it's not. Like I've got other friends who, kind of got into house music at the same time, and they don't have anywhere near the same curiosity. They just, take it as it is, and they'll listen to whatever. But some people, they just want to dig deeper and, find more stuff. And there was a few. It's interesting. There was a couple of like CDs that I remember getting, that were like a real catalyst for change. There was one of them was I can't remember what it was now. It was a Loco Dice mix. If you listen to it, definitely you wouldn't have thought it was a Loco Dice mix. The other one that really spun me was Luciano's Fabric mix, and those two in particular just like blew my head off. I was like, oh my god, this is like, there's something else here that I was not aware of. And yeah, those two I remember specifically triggered a series of events for me in terms of finding new music.
Yeah, I think back then they were really ahead of the game, and that's why they've like now. I think when people come into the scene, they kind of don't get why Loco Dice, Luciano are these massive kind of pedestaled artists. But I think it was because back then they were so forward thinking. And because even when I first heard them, I didn't really get it to begin with. But then the more I've delved deeper into what they did before then, even like 20 years ago, some of the tracks Luciano made, it's kind of like, oh my God.
Yeah. Unreal stuff. So, and at that point I was like, I'd probably taken quite a big leap from like electro type, fairly commercialized music to like all of a sudden just opening the door on Pandora's box. Like, oh my God, there's people are making strange sounds and they sound amazing to me.
Yeah, I completely get you. And was it a conscious decision then to be like, oh, I want to start making this kind of music, or was it just you just stumbled into it?
As soon as I heard that sort of stuff, the kind of music where it sort of takes you off on a bit of a journey. You can almost imagine yourself traveling through with the music, and you can. I don't know about you, but when I hear that kind of groovy, consistent, like grooving music, that my mind goes off, and I'll follow the percussion on this route, and then all of a sudden I'm getting pulled back to like the bass line, and you kind of just weaving in and out of all the different components of the track. And for me, I was like, that is the music I want to make. And then I just locked in on that and just kept pushing and pushing on it.
Yeah, because you went to Australia with your work, is that correct?
That's true, yeah.
So did you ever think you wanted to do music full time, or have you always been very happy just to do that as a hobby / part-time job, whatever you want to call that?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I have a whole other career. I'm fairly successful at what I do in terms of my other job. So I work in IT. Not so much a technical person, but I sell software. I work for a pretty prestigious IT software vendor. And yeah, it's been like something I did ever since I finished university, and I've been in the same sort of career, same type of job ever since. So it's I'm not going to say that like it's a fully financially driven decision, but for me, I'd set up a particular way of life through the career that I'd chosen, that replacing that into a music career would have been very difficult, and would have just was too much of a risk. But don't get me wrong, there's been many times where I've like, oh, I'd love to do this full time, but at the same time, it was just too much of a jump. Had I got into things a lot earlier and a lot sooner, I would have probably could have taken that journey. But you know, in my by the time I was making good music and in a position where that maybe could have been a possibility, I was already like in my early 30s, you know, 10, 12 years into a successful IT career. So yeah, it was just one of those things where I would just found a nice happy middle ground. I've been fortunate. Pre-COVID, I've always been in position to sort of work from home as well. So I was sneaking an extra hour or two here and there. You know, in the morning I could quickly reference tracks, or in my lunch break I could like go and tweak something, or you know, I could bunk off early, you know, at 4 o'clock rather than working through till 5, 6 o'clock, and kind of work on bits and bobs there. So I managed to find a really good balance. You know, I was still doing well at work and being able to sort of squeeze a lot more music in than somebody else who would be working full time in an office and stuff. So
Yeah, I had Gene on Earth on the podcast last week, so that'll be going out the week before we put this one out. And we spoke about the importance of these COVID times, realizing that having different streams of income is kind of really important. And I think a lot of people, I think if you've been doing it for a long time and you had money saved up, this would have been an absolute, that would have been okay if you had obviously finance you could depend on. But for those that were just in the middle ground, for example me, if I hadn't launched SYNTHO, I'd have been like stuck at fucking square one. And then I've spent time reflecting during this period, like, shit, it's not that much of a bad idea to go and get your career first and have something on the side that's always something to fall back on, because God forbid, imagine something like your hearing went, or I don't know, numerous things meant you couldn't tour. I think if it's one of those things where you kind of get told, I think, to throw all your eggs in one basket and just go balls deep. But I think now the approach has changed a bit, where everyone's like, wait a sec, let's do something more sensible, not kind of balls deep on it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'd always kind of been of the opinion that huge success was on the other side of huge sacrifice, and I had actually subscribed to the idea that I was probably never going to become like a world famous massive DJ, because I wasn't prepared to let go of my other career. But exactly to your point, there's been, you know, I mean, we're nowhere near past it. You know, you only have to look at what's going on in the UK. They're extending, and who knows how that's going to play out. Like, we're nowhere near past these COVID times, and gigs and stuff. It's so unpredictable that you're right. You should have an alternate stream of income. You should have an alternate stream of, I guess, interest in terms of how you get your music out, or how you interact with the music scene. And from a very like early point, I decided that I wanted to take a lot of this sort of stuff into my own control. So I obviously run a couple of labels now, a number of labels, and the reason why I did that is because I wanted things to be in my control, and I wanted to have ownership of something that was contributing to the scene, not just like a one-way thing where I was getting gigs and releasing on other people's labels. I wanted to own the process and have something to show for it. You know, it doesn't necessarily bring in a lot of money, but it does all right. And yeah, it's kind of like having ownership. That's why when I saw what you did, Josh, with the SYNTHO thing, I think I was like, that's a fantastic move. I always tell people whenever they ask me for my advice on this, that you should just do something. Doesn't matter what it is. If you set up a radio show, a podcast, events, or a label, or whatever, do something and own that thing, and then be a contributor, not just a taker from the scene. So That was my kind of ethos behind it. It's sort of linked to what we were just talking about, I suppose.
Yeah, I think if you do something well, like do a radio show, if you do it long enough and do it well enough, the power of the internet could lead you anywhere you don't even realise. I think I've thought about this when you watch these football pundits on TV, right? You've got Gary Neville, Roy Keane, who else? They're now on ITV like 3-4 nights a week on Sky Sports. They've got their own shows. Like Harry Redknapp's got his own show on Sky. And it just shows you the opportunity the internet and TV and things like that can arise. If you do radio, you may think that... I remember I used to laugh, right? My dad used to think I wanted to be a DJ on the radio. And I used to be like, no, you got it wrong completely. But I couldn't even be asked explaining it. But it's so funny because now it's kind of gone full circle where, like, who says I wouldn't one day do a radio show? But if I'd actually done, say, Unity FM in Manchester, started that 5 years ago, probably could have got a slot if you asked nicely enough and said, I'll do the dark hours of Wednesday night. And he did that for 5 years. The power of the internet could have then got you a show on Rinse, then a show on BBC. But it's like anything you just said there. You could start a label, do your label for a few years, then you could become a label manager for Hot Creations. There's actually a lot of jobs in this scene and a lot of opportunity that isn't just being the DJ, but by what you just said, by contributing to the scene and doing something long enough and well enough, I think there's actually a lot of opportunities that could lead to outside of music. Because who says that a great... Look at Danny Howard, man. He's fucking... He won a DJ competition, I think, didn't he, for Radio 1 or something like that in Ibiza. And he's just taken over Pete Tong's show. And that's kind of on a tangent, but it kind of just shows you he was just DJing at, like... I don't think he was doing anything special. I think he might have done like his own radio show or something. Then it's led to this massive... Now he's a global superstar from talking on a microphone.
Yeah, I just emphasize it every time anyone asks me about this sort of thing, getting into the scene. Is just do something. Like, don't just hope that you're going to break into the scene. Take the initiative, take the bull by the horns, and create something yourself. And if you do it, to your point, if you do it long enough and put enough emotion into it, like, it'll gather interest. And the internet's a crazy place. I still can't get my head around, because obviously I'm 37 now, and I was around before internet times and before Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff. And the power of being able to create an Instagram page, get probably, a couple of hundred followers within a few days, or certainly within a few weeks, and then be able to speak to those people every day, just like that. Like, just think about that for a minute, what that was like pre-internet world or pre-social media world. What would you do? Round up 200 people and go, hear ye, I'm going to speak to you for 2 minutes. Like, it just wasn't possible. So the power of being able to grab 200, or if you've got thousands of followers, even better, from all over the world at the click of your fingers, and tell them whatever you want to tell them, whenever you want to tell them, it's just unbelievably powerful. When you have a strong following, you take it even further and you get stronger and stronger following, like, you can start to monetize that. So, like you do with your like academy stuff, is like, you've now got like the strength of your following. People understand who you are, what you do, and you can monetize that by saying, well, we have a service, and this service delivers this, and like, they're already invested in you emotionally because they're following you, and they're like they like your music and stuff. So yeah, like, the power of having a strong following is just unbelievable in this day and age, and we take it for granted that you have access to people that just wasn't there before.
Yeah, it's a genuine asset. Having an Instagram following is an asset that has a monetary value. 10,000 live followers that are existing, you've not bought them. That is, I think, how could you put a money value on it? But it's worth a lot of money to be able to have 2,000. Like Instagram stories, I get about 2,000 views sometimes, or more. Sometimes I've had 3,000. But that means I've had 3,000 people look at a story. And we all know when you look at a story, you actually see it. Instagram posts, algorithms and all that, it's a bit of a hit and miss. You can't really tell. But stories are a very accurate representation of who's seen what. And like, the fact you can actually get... Because even when I was starting, Instagram stories aren't even that old. But now if you utilize these tools, I think you can speed up growth rapidly. And I always say to people, though, that don't post much, I go, are you familiar with James Smith, the PT? He's actually based in Australia.
Yeah, I am actually. I've seen quite a bit of his stuff recently.
So, right, he posts about 30 stories a day, right? He's got 800k followers, right? there is a direct correlation between the amount he posts and the amount of followers he's got. Like that, he says openly that that's kind of his job. That's the front end of his sales funnel. That Courtney Black as well, who's the PT, she posts the same amount, and there's actually nothing stopping anyone posting that many stories each day. Yes, there may be no context to it, it may become annoying, but everyone, I've said this before, should be able to think of something to post each day if it's one story. And by posting once, it's going to increase the chances of whoever, like one new follower, you know, or if you've got a product or you've got a record on sale, by posting at least once a day. And so when people feel like, oh, I'm not sure what to do next to kind of get myself bigger, I would just say first things first, just post once a day. Do it for a month and see how you get on.
Yeah, definitely. I remember reading, I don't know whether this was a book or a blog article or something, but it was about something about the power of the value of having 1,000 followers. And it was I think it was saying that actually you only have to run a successful business, you only need 1,000 true dedicated followers or dedicated fans, and that's enough to basically create the livelihood that you want. So yeah, it's hugely powerful. I'm not particularly like I wouldn't say I'm particularly good on Instagram and kind of doing stuff, but I know I've got good followers on there who they engage with me, they write me messages, and you know, I'm often getting like encouraging words around my music and stuff. So I know there are people on there that follow me. So if I release a record, you know, my labels, we only do 300 copies most times. I very, very rarely ever repress. In fact, I don't think I have ever repressed, maybe once or twice. So I know that if I release a record on my own label, I need to sell 300 copies. I know there's probably 300 people on my Instagram that when they see that I post a record, they're probably going to buy it, or at least go and check it out and listen to it and make a decision on it. So I'm like, I've got this kind of like, I don't plan to conquer the world. I've not got delusions of grandeur, but I've set up a nice little thing where I'm releasing what I think is good quality music, and I've got a nice audience of people who will support me in that journey. So yeah, it's pretty cushy.
Yeah, I think that's a spot on way to look at it, and the asset is the word. It's an asset, and being aware that it is a numbers game. If you think about it, like we've got a record out next Friday, we're pressing 300, and even with 10,000 followers, I probably haven't got 300 people which will buy the physical copy. But the more followers is probably going to increase the chance of selling 300 copies. Obviously, you can say you just make good music, but like it's only going to help, right?
Yeah.
So moving on from music, man, I have seen through social media it's been quite an eventful 18 months or so, or a bit longer for you.
Yeah, pretty crazy time. So where to start? I mean, the most beautiful thing that's happened to me is I had a son, just over a year now. He's 16 months old. The most beautiful natured, funny, just an absolute star. Like it just brightens up our lives unbelievably. And that I guess that you just cannot explain it, right? If you haven't got kids, you cannot explain the feeling in your heart when you see your child. It's just, you know, nothing comes close. So that's been probably, you know, the biggest life event for me. And it was came at a pretty fucked up time. Like he was born in January in 2020, and then less than probably 6 weeks later, I think the world started to go mental. So he was what we call a COVID baby. Spent first formative months of his life locked up and not interacting with other humans, but he's well past that now, and yeah, he's got a very, very strong character. But whilst all that was happening, I also found out that I was pretty ill. In fact, this was just a little bit before that. So whilst my partner was pregnant, I found out that I had kidney disease in both kidneys, and I was effectively running around on 10% of my original kidney function, which came as a massive shock, and definitely at a time when you kind of want to be at your best, and you start thinking about how you're going to prepare for a child, and how you're going to bring up your child and be the best person you possibly can be. And then you realize, actually, I've got a pretty tough time ahead, and not quite knowing how you're going to resolve it. So kidney disease is a weird one. Like, when I found out I had it, my kidney function was like 10%. And if you'd have asked me there and then, like, well, in fact, when they told me, I just denied it. I was like, you've got it wrong. Like, I feel fine, absolutely fine. Like, this can't be right. And often it is symptomless, or I'm going to say symptomless, but it's not symptomless, but you don't realize because it takes so long for your kidney function to drop. So the difference in physical feeling between having a 10% function and a 90%, which most people are 90 to 100%, it's a massive difference. But I didn't know, because over that time, it's such a gradual decline, you just don't realize. Only when they told me, only once they told me what the situation was and what the symptoms were and stuff, it all started to make sense. Because I was like, I think I was 35, going on 36 at the time. And I'm like, oh, is this what it feels like to get in your mid-30s? I'm like, oh, I'm always aching, I'm tired, I'm like, feeling run down. I'm like, well, this is around about the time when footballers start to retire. So yeah, this must be what it's like just to get old. And then I realized, actually, no, it's not because you're getting old, it's because your kidneys are fucked. So yeah, I was faced with a difficult decision. It was like, basically, you need to have a transplant ASAP, which is highly unlikely because we were like about to go in COVID situation, and the matching and things takes a long time, and all my family are back in the UK. So it was like, that's not happening. You're going to have to go on dialysis, which is, I don't know if you've heard of that before, but it's like basically you can replicate the function of what the kidney does. So the kidneys basically filter your blood from all the toxins in your body, and the waste goes into your urine, and then your blood circulates around your body healthy and clean. And dialysis can replicate that function outside the body or inside the body. If you do a particular type of dialysis, they basically fill you with fluid, and it filters the waste out. So I had to do that for like a year whilst we tried to sort out like a donor and try and get a donor in situ so that I could have a transplant, which carried its own sort of challenges as well. But anyway, eventually it all came good, and in February of this year, I had a transplant, and been feeling pretty amazing ever since, really. In fact, so much so that I ran a triathlon in, when was that? That was April, I think, April or May. It's less than 3 months after having the transplant. I managed to raise $16,000 for Kidney Health Australia, which was quite a significant thing for me, because I wanted to give back to, do something to give back. Like I'd been in a situation where I'd kind of received a lot of help. I was very fortunate. I received a kidney from somebody, and it was like an opportunity for me to try and give back, and also give back in the sense of providing inspiration for people who might be going through a particularly tough time. Not necessarily kidney transplant, it could be anything. But one of the things that I wish that I'd seen when I was going into that situation is somebody who'd been through it the other side, and who would come out stronger, or come out in a good spot, and like that motivation or that inspiration to kind of move things on. So hopefully that's what I did, and hopefully help some people along the way by inspiring them.
Incredible, man. Incredible.
That's what's been going on, yeah. Music's taking a bit of a back seat whilst all that was going on, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think the fans will be, they'll excuse you. But
I still managed to get some releases out. I'm like digging through all my old stuff. I'm like, I've definitely got an EP in here somewhere.
But yeah, man, that's incredible to come from that and do a triathlon. So was there any actual symptoms or just tiredness?
Yeah, so high blood pressure, tiredness, a bit of a like sick feeling, headaches was the problem that I had. So because my blood pressure was so high, I was getting like waking up every morning with really bad headaches. But it's really hard to describe. There's basically just a feeling of being, I want to say like dirty on the inside. It's like it's quite
Yeah.
hard to explain, but you just don't feel right. You feel slow, clogged up, and just dirty inside. It's like a you can when you think about what it is, like you've got your blood's flowing around your body with more toxins in it than it should have. That's pretty much how it feels. Like you, that's the only way I can really describe it.
Yeah, doesn't sound good, man. And then the triathlon. What was that? Whose crazy idea was that? Was that yours?
Yeah, it was my idea. Um, I guess I've got my friend Dan to thank for just sort of tempering my enthusiasm a little bit because I was like, I rang him up, I think 3 weeks after the operation or something, 4 weeks after the operation. I'm like, mate, I feel fantastic. Like, we've got to do something. I need to do something to sort of like, to show that I'm doing good and I want to inspire and all this. And I'm like, let's do a triathlon. He was like, mate, I'll do anything you want to do. I'll support you. We'll do it together. I was like, right, let's do the full triathlon, the Olympic standard one, which is a um, a kilometre and a half swim, a 40-kilometre bike ride, and a 10K run. And my mate was just like, Dave, you're not going to do that. Like, you're not in a position to do that less than 3 months after your operation. I said, look, let's do it. Like, even if I've got to crawl over the line, we'll get there. And he was like, well, let's do. I said, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll each go off, do each leg, like independently. Like one day do a swim, then we'll do a bike ride, whatever. So I went off to do the swim, and I rang him up after the swim. I was like, right, we're not doing the full distance. After doing a 1,500-meter swim in the sea, I was just like, fuck, this is, yeah, probably bitten off more than I could chew. So we decided to do the sprint version, which is like half the size. Yeah, still pretty challenging. I was absolutely fucked at the end of it, but yeah, good choice in the end.
Yeah, swimming is so fucking hard.
It's horrible.
My mate's doing an Ironman. It's like a fucking ridiculous length thing.
Yeah.
And it was funny. He started training about a year ago, maybe just under a year ago. But I was going to the gym with him like when he was doing his sessions when he first started, and I started the swimming with him. Even doing a few lengths, if you're not that strong, I'm not a bad swimmer, but I'm far from I would say like an Olympic swimmer. But man, that shit is hard. That's the worst out of the lot, I think.
Yeah, it's absolutely horrible, and like especially in the seas, even worse. I mean, it wasn't exactly warm when I was practicing. I think I only went in the sea like once or twice. I went down to the pool. They've got like a seawater baths just down the road here. So I was like, okay, I'll practice in here. That was a bit easier, but I've never been a strong swimmer. But then on the actual race, swimming. So well, you all set off at the same time. There's like a lot. You go in waves, but it's hard enough swimming. But then you got like feet in your face and water splashing everywhere. And I'm just like, I remember getting to the first buoy. Like halfway out, I'm like, oh my god, I might not even make it back here. Like clinging onto this buoy, like, yeah, not good.
Yeah, the problem is with swimming. I think with like running and cycling, even if you're about to drop dead, you can keep running, and it's just one foot in front of the other. But swimming, there's so much to do. It's like you can't really just
you
can't
can't
really
stop
just wing
otherwise
it.
you drown.
Yeah, literally, that's the problem.
But no, running, I absolutely love running. That's something I've like. It's been a constant for me for a good few years now, and I just buzz off running. I love it so much. I don't know. It's like a weird, maybe it's like a weird fetish, but that feeling when I like to run as fast as I can. I'd like to do 5 and 10Ks, and particularly I like doing 5K runs, and I try my best to beat my time pretty much every time I do it. But I just love that feeling of like your chest pumping and you're like out of breath, but you just keep pushing and pushing. Because the 5K distance is kind of like, it's just that length of time where you can go flat out and like, okay, 20 minutes, 22 minutes or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
it's over soon.
It's not going to kill me, but it's still long enough that you can really feel it. So yeah,
I think the feeling at the end, it's almost like your lungs are bleeding. They're just like, and then
Yeah.
yeah, I think always. I actually really got into running probably the last 18 months or so, but it's just the injuries, man. Like I fucked my knee at the moment. I need to go to the physio, but I'm always like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. But
Yeah.
I think it's the when you're running, I feel like it's just because you can't really think about. I don't know. Your mind just goes to different places. I think only when you're running, because even if you do like bike or anything at the gym, I still feel myself go on my phone or something between it. But
Yeah.
when running, it's just like being in the real world, breathing fresh air, with your lungs bleeding. There's something magical about it.
Yeah. It's like the sort of half an hour that I get my time in my head, and I guess it also helps that I run along the beach here and it's like beautiful views and stuff. But yeah, just that like half an hour of your time, no interruptions, no baby screaming or crying or shouting at you, and yeah, it's just like it's good for your mind, I think, as well as your body.
Yeah, it's good for the brain. That's what I always say. So, do you think Australia is going to be forever?
Well, that's a good question. we're like we're definitely torn at the moment a little bit between um, Robin, who's my son, not having access to grandparents. So that's difficult. It's difficult for our parents, our grandparents, for Robin. Um, it's difficult for us. Like I mean, you get FaceTime and stuff, which is good, and he's starting to realize, that there's someone on the other end of the line. But part of us feels like we're sort of depriving him of that right to have grandparents access. But then you just weigh it up with like the quality of life here, and unfortunately, like you look at what's going on back home and some of the politics and the leadership's just dreadful, and you just think like, I don't know how I would feel going back. I I know that if I went back within a very short amount of time, I'd probably regret it. But having said all that, we're not guaranteed a place here anyway. So Australia's got pretty strict visa and entry rules, and we're here on a temporary residence. So we had 2 years originally. Then I've just extended that now. I'm on to another 2 years, and then I get another 2 years at the end of that. And unless they change the rules between that now and that time, which they probably will do, or I find an alternative way to get onto a permanent residency, there's going to be some tough decisions we'll have to make. So by no means guaranteed, but if we want to stay, we'll probably find a way. There's just a couple of things sort of pulling us either way at the moment. But in terms of like a place to bring up a child and the lifestyle, yeah, you can't really beat it.
Yeah, I could only dream of growing up in Australia. It must have been like, I could just imagine it being, I don't know, maybe it's kind of the perfect picture we imagine in England, but I think there would be a lot of pros to growing up there. But then on the other hand, I do get your point, and I think sometimes I'd maybe struggle to kind of actually feel at home because you're constantly thinking, I've got family at home, and sometimes I bet it's hard to enjoy the moment fully.
Yeah, that definitely took a while to get used to, like, this being your home. And I remember when I first moved here, like the time difference thing, like 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, all your friends are waking up, and then your phone would start lighting up. You'd get a lot of messages and stuff in the afternoon, and then you're winding down for the day, and obviously everyone in England's having their day, and then you'd wake up in the morning, you'd have messages and stuff on your phone, but then all through your day it'd be like silence.
Yeah.
And that was a bit weird, trying to get used to that and stuff. And then just kind of always having part of your mind back home, like, oh, what's going on? Oh, everyone's going to this night this weekend. You're like, it doesn't fucking matter. You're not going. You're not gonna go. You're not gonna know what happened. Like, just fucking forget about it. So now I very rarely like look at what people are doing or what's on and stuff back home, because it fucking makes no difference. I remember
And there's nothing on.
yeah, there's nothing on anyway. I remember thinking like, oh shit, I'm gonna miss Horton Festival and all this. I'm like, nothing you can do about it. So just like crack on, and yeah, I've got my own life here now. So
Yeah, there is a really sick festival though, isn't it, in Australia, where like Zip and stuff play. I can't remember the name of it now.
Subsonic, yeah.
That's it.
I've not managed to go to that one yet. Although I have actually we just bought tickets for another festival. It was like, I actually don't even know much about it. My partner was like, "Look, we're going to this festival. Are you either coming or not?" So I'm like, "Fuck it, yeah, I'll come along." I've got no idea what it might be. A bloody psytrance festival for all I know, but it's the first opportunity we've got to like go and have some fun without our son. So yeah, I'll be doing a bit of festival stuff this year, I suppose.
Good shit, man. Fingers crossed. I think you're okay, aren't you now in Australia for all the COVID, etc.
Yeah, I mean it's without wanting to go into like a COVID conversation because
Yeah,
everyone.
definitely not. I try and dodge it, but as soon as you're from Australia, I feel like there's like a 2 minute
Yeah,
exception.
I'll give you the lowdown. Right, there's a completely different like approach to it over here than what they have in England, and part of that's geographical because we're literally isolated on the other side of the world, so we can afford to like close our borders and have that sort of strict like entry policy. The UK, that's probably not as easy. You're right on the doorstep of Europe. There's a lot of trade coming in and out. It's not straight. You can just like put up the barriers and say that's it. We're isolated, but so our tolerance to COVID is very, very low, like super low. You wouldn't believe it compared to what you guys go through back home. So if we have a single case, everything goes on high alert. If that case escalates to 2 or 3 people, like they'll consider a localized lockdown. Any more than 5 people, the whole state goes into lockdown. We've just come down out of one a 2 week lockdown last Friday, because there was an outbreak from someone who went in the hotel quarantine. Somehow they'd when they left, they got the virus. I don't know how that works after 14 days. And then yeah, boom, they shut the whole state down. That was it. Two
Fucking
two
hell.
week lockdown. Yeah, because there was like 5 people had caught it.
Jesus.
Which is like, you think it's extreme. I think that's probably how it should be run over here.
Mm.
I don't think that's how it should be run in the UK or in Europe because it's just not feasible. But I'm okay with that. Like, I'd rather have. I can settle for a 2 week lockdown or a 5 day lockdown. We've had a 5 day lockdown before as well. Knowing that after that 5 days, we go straight back to normal. Shops are open, bars are open, like restaurants, boom, it's just normal. So
Yeah.
we sort of tolerate that. And the other difference here is that people are they're a lot more like respectful of what the government tell them to do. Like if the government
Yeah.
say don't do this, like people, all right, fair play, we won't do that, and we'll see how it goes. And it's kind of worked out. So yeah, we just go with the flow here.
Yeah, so you probably will get events, but I have got to say, I think, I don't know. I mean, there's no point even speculating because who even fucking knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So, labels and Niko Maxen music wise, I'm guessing you've not had a chance to make much stuff, which is completely understandable.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to make much stuff, but there was a way. I had a spell. So I moved into this house a year ago. Um, Built a new studio in this room here where I am now, and didn't really get to use it much. And then I had a wave of about a 3 or 4 week period where I was hammering it, and got quite a good workflow. Like I said before, my style of music's not that much based around like melodic and instruments and stuff. So for me, like laying down grooves and stuff, I'll write like 5 or 6 tracks in a day if I just put my mind to it. So I actually hammered it. I made a big bunch of tunes, and I'm still sort of living off those for the time being. So I managed to get the a new Constant Black EP out of it. I managed to get my Maxen '03 out of that. Couple of bits on some of my unknown labels. So yeah, I managed to like, I'm keeping things rolling, but I'm like looking through my banks now. I'm like, probably
Running
need to
out.
make some new music.
Yeah, I found that since I would say once kind of getting over the learning curve, and I mean getting quite high up the learning curve. I'm still obviously learning all the time, but I feel like now I can kind of batch produce.
Yeah.
I feel like in a way I make better music in flurries. Like obviously keep making tunes all the time, but I always feel like I seem to have like a month where I'll make like 4 or 5 really good tracks, and then it almost feels a bit weird because sometimes they never take much effort either. Like like you just said, then I could do like 2, 3 in a day, and maybe all 3 of them are label worthy, but almost feels like, oh, that was way too easy to make that track.
Yeah. Do you know, I was actually thinking about this, and I'm exactly the same as what you're saying, right? I can when I'm in the zone, I can make 2 or 3 on the bounce and be happy with them. Compared to like when I first started out, it'd be like a full day for half a track. I think what it is, it's a combination of obviously getting better at your craft and knowing, how to do things. But I think it's your intuition grows when making music. I don't know about you, but like the decision-making process now is like, it's instant. There's no, oh, should I do this? Should I do that? It's like my intuition is just telling me, right, boom, this is the next thing that's going in. Even as I'm like putting one layer in. So say I'm writing the drums and then I've written a bass line. I'll write a bass line. As I'm maybe like doing a bit of EQing on the fly, I already know what I'm going to do next. And probably 2 or 3 things after that. So it's like, it's the intuition of making music that as you do it more, you get better at it. So you get faster. It's just how it works, I think.
Yeah, someone asked me yesterday on Instagram, what are your tips for making your kick and your bass sit? And then I sat there and I thought, I don't do anything. But then I was like, shit, I do stuff. I just don't think about it because I've done it that many times. Like, I don't really think about EQing now as like making something sit. I just kind of do it as I go, and it's just kind of like the bang an EQ on it, then tune it, and then work on the decay, sustain, and release. And then I was like, oh shit, I do stuff. But because I've made that many tracks now, these kind of steps in the production process aren't really steps anymore. It's just by default, I think is the best way to put it.
Yeah,
and
I agree. Yeah,
and what you said about the decision making as well. I think regardless of music, being able to make decisions in life is such an important thing. And I think when I see people that are big overthinkers and they struggle to either say yes or no or decide if something's good or bad, yes, it's hard for us to be like, right, that tune sounds good, but I think you can learn to become better at making decisions, and making music especially is just decide, right, that'll do, and move on to the next thing.
Yeah,
I think being
definitely.
indecisive in anything in life is fucking dangerous, but I think that's a skill which I'm glad I've got, is decision making.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Josh. Like, decision making is a skill, and like you can get better at it. First thing you got to do is just let go of like the importance of that decision. Like the anxiety and the worry is in the procrastination of the decision. The freedom comes once you've made it. As soon as you make a decision, it's like, oh, right, next, boom, on. It doesn't even matter anymore. But I think it's Tony Robbins who always bangs on about this bit, is where you are today as a result of every decision you've ever made. So fucking get better at the decisions you make if you want to get into a better place. And that's something that stuck with me for a while. Yeah.
That's really good. And I was talking about this yesterday on a podcast I recorded. It was that Jeff Bezos and what's he called, Elon Musk, they're obviously incredible humans, but they're just incredible at making decisions. That's essentially all they've done. They can just make decisions about things that are a bit more complex than us. But yeah, I think what you've just said about the Tony Robbins quote is, we literally are just a result of all the decisions we've made to get to this point, which I've never actually thought about, which is, it's like that emphasizes what I just said, that decision making is important, and you just got to say yes or no sometimes and pick what you're going to do. And worst comes to worst, you just have to correct the decision. But it depends, I guess, what you're doing. But yeah, I think overthinking and procrastination can be the devil inside music and outside of music.
Yeah, 100%. And some of the decisions that you make, like you think they're really these really important decisions, but they're actually not, because you make them, and then if it doesn't work out, there's always a way back round anyway.
Always.
So, yeah, it's like, if you, rather than thinking of the decision as being critical, really actually what's critical is your ability to problem solve and be adaptive. Like, that's probably what's important. That if you back yourself in being able to be agile, adaptive, and be able to respond to your surroundings, then those kind of people probably generally less get hung up on decisions, because they know they're confident in their ability to turn something out of whatever decision they make anyway. So it's an interesting topic. But I hate seeing people who like procrastinate over decisions and procrastinate over like their music, especially. There's one person in particular I'm thinking of who, amazing producer, like unbelievable, but the procrastination and the overthinkingness, I just can't get my head around it. I'm like, what are you doing?
I agree totally. I think away from music, I think trusting your future self to deal with situations is comes down to, like, right, an example is if you're in school, I can't be asked to do the homework today, but trusting your older self tomorrow to be able to box it off. You can look at it small scale, or look at it like, right, I've got 500 quid left in my bank account. I want to buy this synth, but then I'll be skint. But trusting yourself to make that money back in the future. And obviously, you're sensible with these things, but having confidence that in 10 years' time, I know that I could spend X amount of money today on something, but I'll work hard and make that money back. Or, for example, eating a donut, but I trust my future self to go to the gym and do a proper workout. I think having that trust in your future self can make decision making easier. But if you always go against what you say, for example, if you say tomorrow morning I'm going to go to the gym, you don't go to the gym, then you begin not to be able to trust your own word. Then I can understand why your decision making is incapable and indecisive, because you can't even stick to your own word. So I think it all kind of stems in this big cycle.
That's a really interesting point, Josh, and I like your perspective on it. There's a school of thinking that like discipline is like one of the most important traits you can have, because if you become finely tuned at discipline and you like ultimately you're a very disciplined person, then it takes away that question mark over things going forward, because you know that you can just always rely on yourself to do the things you've told yourself you will do. Whereas people who aren't disciplined and stuff, you absolutely nailed it. What you said, like if you don't have that level of discipline, then you probably don't trust yourself to make the right decisions, because you know you're not going to have the discipline required to like adapt and do what's needed when you said you were going to do it.
Yeah, the best expression that I spoke about yesterday on a podcast was that when you make a to-do list and it comes to the next day, or you've got your schedule, you imagine that you're just doing it for the boss. Like what you've wrote to do today, say record podcast, record video, mix down this, do this lesson, walk the dog. You complete them tasks as if the boss has assigned the tasks. This is something to do if you're self-employed or whatever. And you just imagine you're just carrying them out. And I definitely don't always stick to my word. But there's things I always do, like going to the gym doesn't require any effort to me, because it's a discipline which I've ingrained over the 7 years, 8 years going to the gym. But being able to trust yourself just to do things makes life easier then, because then there is less decisions to even be made. I don't have to decide in the morning if I'm going to go for a walk or go to the gym. I don't even decide. It's just kind of like by default. And then it saves the cognitive power to make them important decisions. Say today I was coming up with a new marketing plan for something. I've not had to spend the whole morning thinking, should I go to the gym? Actually, no, let's not go to the gym. Or, some people can't even decide what shoes to put on. They'll spend half an hour like, them trainers or them trainers. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah, no, I get that's a good point, man. Like my partner, she's got this whiteboard that's always up in the kitchen, and she puts her to-do lists on it. And she's like, do you need anything doing? Just put it on that board, because it always gets done. I'm like, and every day she's got new things on there, and she's scrubbing them off like done. And she never finishes a day without doing everything that's on the board. So she's like, that's her little saying is like, if something needs to do it, I'll put it on the board and we know it's going to get done.
Yeah, it's good shit. I think it's the accountability as well of like writing it down, like, I'm going to do this. But sometimes I was writing a piece of paper. Oh no, I've got a book, sorry. And then once the page I used to just do one each page, but now I'm doing it like, so the day you kind of continue down each page so it's full. So I can see the to-do list from the day before, because before it kind of the page got turned, and if something didn't get done, I didn't even see it. So trying to keep myself more accountable.
So you can't escape. Like we'll just turn the page on that one. Forget about that.
So man, well, I think before we finish, I've not really asked anyone recently, but what advice would you give to your younger self as a music producer?
Ooh, yeah, good one. Honestly, I probably would have said to there's a very specific thing. I would have invested in a better sound card and some better equipment earlier on. And I don't mean just like going out and buying a load of synths and stuff or whatever, but I procrastinated over like buying a good high quality sound card for a while, and I wish I'd done that a lot sooner. I guess you can extrapolate that out to like, if you're going to buy something, like don't just buy a cheap version. Wait till you've got the money and get the thing that you actually want. Don't sacrifice on those types of things, and get the core of your studio as high a quality as you possibly can. And then I guess the other advice I would give is probably, which probably most people would say, is like don't rush, don't try and rush to please other people or make music for anyone else but yourself, and trying to get to the end goal any quicker than you need to, because I bet if you ask every single producer, how do your what you deem to be your first track that you felt was well produced compare to where you are now, not just technically, but how does it compare in terms of like musical taste, worlds apart. But at the time when you made that one, you were probably like, boom, I got to send this to every label. This is sick. Oh, this guy's going to love this. I'm going to get it signed to here. Now you probably look back and go, oh God, oh, not that track. Like, I can't believe I made that. And I actually did get it signed, and God, I wish that one wasn't out. You can't go back on that. So don't rush it, and just be patient, because especially in times like now, like there's nothing to chase at the moment. There's no big gig to be had. There's no big fame to be had. So like, take your time and get things that you're actually genuinely proud of.
Yeah, the first point you made there about getting some good equipment, I always emphasize this, regardless of the fact of the equipment. I feel like when you actually invest, that's when you truly put yourself in the game. I think until when you've got your cracked Ableton, your free plugins, your free samples, I feel like it's still too throwaway. You're not like, right, I'm going to fucking do this. And I always say that to people. And secondly, about the music thing and rushing, me and Gene spoke about this, and by the time people watch this, they'll have seen that. And he was saying how he actually spent 11 years before he did his Gene on Earth alias, and he said he was making kind of funky house, Ibiza kind of stuff. And it was a big thing for him to let go of that in the end. But because I said to him, how do you then truly find your sound? And he's like, you just have to keep going and keep going, and eventually you kind of know. But he said as long as things don't change dramatically, which I believe is fine. But you get some people that kind of start off making, I don't know, techno, and then they make, hot creations music, then they make fucking minimal, and it's kind of all over the show. But I think it's two sides of it. Sometimes people overthink it a bit. I do myself sometimes overthink, like, I shouldn't release that record. But then when I actually think about it, I don't think I've ever actually gone on anyone else's back catalogue and gone, why has he released that? I think
No.
when you think about it, no one actually ever does, and people only really judge you off your most recent releases. But then I do see people, especially people inside SYNTHO, because they're in part SYNTHO because they're willing to learn, and come with that comes the eagerness. And I do see some people that have released on labels where I think that's giving you nothing, that label. Like there's no pro for that. You're probably not going to play that tune in a year or two. And it's about being patient and not being too eager. And like you just said, there is no big gig tad now more than ever, but there never really was. Like being able to realize that one EP doesn't change anything is like, my Locust EP, I thought that was going to be I said to Luke Van Dyke, I thought after the Locust EP, I thought the 4 tracks were going to rewrite the whole soundtrack to the world. There'd be a limousine pulled outside on a Friday night. But the reality is, it's one EP, even there's very few tracks you could think, like, for example, Sam's Fury's Laughter, that kind of went bonkers and got signed to Spinning, I think, and was on an advert and all this kind of shit. But even then, his gigs didn't go, I don't think anyway, his gigs went like that. I think when you actually realise that it's not just 1, 2, or even 3 EPs that create a career, it's the slog of years of meeting people, Instagramming, putting out podcasts, just, I think now more than ever it's completely different. I think there is no blueprint anymore, but the blueprint definitely is more than just releasing one EP on Dirty Tech Records from Bradford or something.
It's funny you say that, actually, because there was a point in time where I had, I think, either 3 or 4 EPs lined up, fully signed. They were on labels that I was gunning for, and I knew they were in the pipeline. And these were like decent labels. I had one on Arapu's label, I had one on Bernski's label. I was like, boom, I've fucking done it. Yeah. And I was convinced that once, because they were coming out in sequence as well, they were like 2 months apart. I was like, once these 4 drop, boom, I'm going to be gigging all over the place. And they came out and nothing changed. I'm like, oh shit. Other than maybe I had a few more people knew who I was and like was getting the odd message and stuff, but didn't make the slightest bit of difference in terms of gigs and stuff. And that's when I realized actually, all right, I'm actually just going to start making music. I start from that point on. I started making a lot more music unknown. Like I have 2 labels now that have no titles on, no artist name or anything like that. And I started making more now. I think one of them's up to 6 releases now, and the other one's got 2 or 3. And that's actually, I found a lot of freedom in that. Like I don't need to put my name to things anymore because I don't fucking give a shit.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, I know a big part of my pull/appeal is because of you and me as well. Like I've done an event for 6 fucking years, which is like that's not something you can just do, and you can't just click your fingers and have an event for 6 years. It takes literally 6 years. And I think that's like, for example, one thing that adds to the music. That obviously you could build an amazing mix series, you could have your radio show like you said. There is things you can build around the releases because it's fucking hard. It's such a competitive industry, and you've got to think about, people always say, they ask me, how do I get gigs? And I feel like saying, well, sometimes I do quite abruptly say, it's the free market. It's like going to buy something from the shops. Someone needs to want to buy that loaf of bread, like there's marketing, there's the color of the whatever kind of bread. There is a reason you go and buy that one, and you need to make yourself be different to the other DJs and have an appeal. You can't just be a mediocre DJ who's made 2 mixes and like can barely use Ableton and have never released a track. I think you need to think of this from a business standpoint, that you need to have pull and people need to want to see you DJ. Because if you're, for example, say your fee is £1,000 and tickets are £10, give or take, you need to be able to get at least 100 people to be able to come pay £10 to see you DJ. How many people do you actually speak to that kind of, man, it's a lot of people. 100 people to pay £10 to actually want to see you DJs. It's a lot of people, and there's people that really probably couldn't even get 10 people to pay £10, and they're wasting their time trying to chase the gigs. And I always say, channel your energy into the music, your Instagram mixes and shit like that, because I think it can be quite disheartening, I guess, at the start. Because I do remember at the beginning, it was so fun, them gigs, they're kind of free, don't get paid for them, so like it doesn't really matter. But I think really they didn't really do much apart from kind of itch the ego a bit and kind of made you feel like you're getting somewhere. But in reality, it didn't really turn the needle much.
No, I agree. And it goes back to the point I made at the start, I think, which is like all the more reason to own something, have a method of contribution back in, and have an attachment to you. Like I've done that. I've built several labels now that people know are mine. Each one has its own ethos that brings different artists in from a different either genre or like stage of their career. My main label is about bringing up and coming artists and matching them via remixes with more established people to give them a better platform. Like I do see myself as a contributor to the scene, not just with my own music, but with my labels. Like I'm giving opportunities and creating music for people to consume. And I think like that's probably as much of a draw about me as an artist than my music is, I reckon, is that contribution. And that would be one of the other bits of advice when you asked what advice I would give, not necessarily the advice I'd give to myself, but to somebody else starting out, is find a way to add value. Yeah.
Spot on, man. I think when you think about Niko Maxen, Pathway Trax is a massive part of that, and it supports everything you've just said. Like for me, initially it was I did the club night, I did you and me. I didn't do a label to begin with. We did the night, and then obviously we've got the label now and various other things. But to begin with, it was just like, right, I'm going to DJ, and by creating your own event allows you to DJ as well, which is great, and it allows you to connect with other artists. But I think I will do a dedicated podcast at some point on events and my experience with running a party and a festival. But just start off small. Just find a little venue of 80 capacity or 50, or do live streams from your garden. Yeah. One thing I've realised the last few weeks is that there's not actually many good DJ. You want to watch a live stream if you're partying with your mates or you're having a few beers. It's better to have something visual as well as audio. But there's actually not that many good mixes on YouTube that you can watch. So there's definitely still room for someone to go make a sick mix series. There's obviously the Boiler Room. I think there's that the Mud Show, which has done really good stuff, which I keep watching. That's that Berlin one. But yeah, there's tons of things people can do, and when they're almost sat there wondering why they're not blowing up, and it's like, well, you've not really done that much yet. And when there's people, there is always someone doing more, and you can never be the guy doing the most, really. But yeah, I think even me, when I think about it, I'm like, I probably could do the live stream, like the DJ live stream. But it's easier said than done, no doubt. But I think they are wise words of advice.
Yeah, I agree.
So before we finish, mate, any artists to look out for?
Yeah. So I'll be probably a little bit biased because pick some guys off my labels. So I just released an EP from a guy called Sun Archive, which is Mike, who's a guy up in Sydney. Unbelievable producer, like unreal. I first heard his first EP was on Hoarder. I think it was like the second or third release on Hoarder, and I loved it. I still play the record all the time. Then I found out he was in Sydney. I was up there for a gig, and I met him. I was like, dude, you need to send me some tunes. Like, I really, really want to do an EP with you. Hounded him for like a year. He was like, I'm going to send you. Never got around to it. Eventually, I hounded him to the point where he's like, right, I'll send you something. He sent me 20 tunes. I'm like, fuck, I want to take them all. I could have literally signed all of them there and then. But I picked 4. That's a ripper of an EP. I really love it. That one came out a couple of months back now. I've got another guy. So another Aussie guy, a guy called Vendor, who his music's class. It's really minimal type, but very like intricate, nice and chuggy, like look everything that I'm into. So just dropped an EP with him, 2 tracks from him, and that had a remix from Vincent Aoulian. I've got an EP coming out from Frisky Business, who's also been on Hoarder. Love his style, very like bleepy and just nice and chuggy and yeah, good, really nice stuff. So that's going to come out soon. I found another guy, Jean Brichan, French guy, who's I like his production, so I'm doing an EP for him. He's coming out on Pathway Trax as well. Care Bears, I've signed a 4-track EP off those guys. Love the music they make. It's just real raw analog type stuff. So yeah, there's like some good stuff coming out on those labels, and those are the sort of kind of artists that I've been keeping an eye on recently.
Sick, man. So if you could send me some links over to them, and if there's any other links you'll attach to the video, such as your label and stuff, I will include them below. But thanks for your time, man. It's been a really great chat. I think one of the most interesting podcasts yet. I think we went on some good tangents that I didn't expect, so I'm really happy.
Good stuff, man. Yeah, thanks for having me, Josh. I really appreciate the ask, and I've enjoyed it.
Nice one, man. Hopefully next time I see you, I'll be in Australia.
Yeah. Fingers crossed, mate.